My husband abandoned me at the airport on our honeymoon day to go live with his ex-wife, but when my parents discovered the truth, what I did left them speechless. I'm 29 years old. I work in digital marketing, and about 6 months ago, I married who I thought was the love of my life. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. What happened basically destroyed my marriage before it even hit 2 months, and honestly, I'm still having trouble processing it all. The thing is, I need to tell this story because every time I replay it in my head, I wonder if I was really the one who overreacted, or if I had every right to feel the way I felt. I guess I should start at the beginning, although the beginning is actually complicated to define because looking back, I should have seen it coming from way before. I met Thomas like 3 years ago at a work conference. One of those boring ones where everyone's in suits and nobody really wants to be there, but you have to network. You know. He worked in financial consulting, one of those jobs where people live glued to their phones and are always putting out client fires. At first, I thought he was super dedicated and ambitious, like the perfect man who has his priorities straight and knows what he wants. He was attentive when we were together, brought me flowers sometimes. And when he proposed to me like a year and a half ago, I thought it was the easiest decision in the world. My family adored him. My friends said I was lucky. And I was convinced we were going to be happy forever and all that shit they sell you in movies. But from the moment we started planning the wedding, I noticed some weird things. Thomas worked until super late almost every day. Like he'd get home at 11 at night and I'd already be asleep. On weekends, there was always some emergency with some client and he had to answer calls or check emails for hours. I tried to be understanding because, well, that's his job, right? I couldn't ask him to stop being responsible. But what really started to bother me was his relationship with Elizabeth, his ex-wife. Yes, you read that right. Ex-wife. Thomas had been married before. They divorced like 4 years ago. You think? Or maybe 5. It was never completely clear to me. And according to him, they maintained a super healthy and mature friendship. She called him often, like 2 or 3 times a week, to ask for advice about random things like fixing her car or problems with her landlord, and he always dropped whatever he was doing to help her. At first, I tried to be the cool girlfriend who doesn't get jealous or make drama over stupid things. But the truth is, it bothered me. It bothered me a lot. It's not that I thought they still had something going on. I mean, technically, I trusted Thomas, but there was something about the dynamic that just felt wrong. Like she still saw him as her emergency person for everything, and he didn't know how to say no. One time we were having dinner for my birthday. He had made a reservation at this super nice Italian restaurant I love, and she called because her washing machine had broken down and she needed Thomas to come to her house to wash in. Check it. And he went. He literally got up from the table, gave me a kiss on the forehead, said he'd be back in an hour, and left. I went back to my house alone that night, and he got home like at 2 in the morning because turns out it wasn't the washing machine, it was the water heater, and he ended up staying to fix it. When I complained to him the next day, he said I was overreacting, that Elizabeth didn't have anyone else who could help her, and that I should understand that being kind to your ex is a sign of emotional maturity. My sister, Monica, who lives in another city like 2 hours away, told me it was a giant red flag and that I should seriously talk to Thomas about boundaries, but I don't know. I was scared of seeming like the typical controlling and insecure girlfriend. Plus, we were getting married in a month and we'd already spent a ton of money on the venue, the catering, the photographer, everything. I couldn't cancel the wedding over an uncomfortable feeling, right? So I swallowed my doubts and went ahead with the plans, convincing myself that once we were married, things would change, that he would finally set boundaries with Elizabeth, that his work would calm down a bit, that everything was going to be fine. The wedding was beautiful. I'm not going to lie. My parents cried. Thomas's parents too. We had like 150 guests and everyone seemed genuinely happy for us. We danced until 3 in the morning. And that night when we got to the hotel, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. I thought, okay, all those silly fears I had were just pre-wedding jitters. This is going to work. We spent a week in our new house. Well, it was Thomas's apartment, but now it was ours, and everything seemed perfect. We cooked together, watched movies. He even left his phone on the nightstand some nights without being glued to it, checking emails. I thought I had finally found the Thomas I had fallen in love with at the beginning. And then came time for the honeymoon. We had planned this incredible trip to Greece, like 2 weeks touring the islands, eating delicious food, swimming in paradise beaches, everything you dream of for a perfect honeymoon. The flight left on a Monday at 10 in the morning. We had to be at the airport 2 hours early, and on Sunday night we were super excited packing the last things. Thomas got an email like at 11 at night and made a weird face. He told me he had a meeting with an important client on Monday morning, but not to worry, that he was going to cancel it or send someone else in his place. I believed him. I mean, why wouldn't I believe him? On Monday morning, I woke up super early, like 6:30, to finish getting ready. Thomas was already awake, on the phone in the living room, talking in a low voice. When I asked him what was going on, he said the client had gotten difficult and that he had to go to the meeting personally, but that it was going to be super quick, an hour max, and that we'd meet directly at the airport. I wasn't happy about that, but well, what was I going to do? Drag him to the airport? I told him, okay, see you there, and called an Uber to go with the luggage. I got to the airport like at 7:45, checked my phone like 1,000 times waiting for a message from Thomas saying he was on his way. At 8:15, I started getting nervous. At 8:30, I was calling him, but he wasn't answering. And then, exactly at 8:40, remember because I looked at the clock thinking how much time we had before they closed check-in, I got a text message from him, not a call, a message. It said, Anna, I'm so sorry, but I'm not going to be able to take the flight. Elizabeth had an emergency and needs me to take her to the hospital. Take the flight by yourself, and I'll catch up with you in a few days when I sort this out. I love you. I stared at the message for like 5 minutes, unable to process it. Are you telling me that my husband, who I've been married to for literally a month, is standing me up at the airport on the day of our honeymoon to help his ex-wife? It couldn't be real. It had to be a bad joke or a horrible misunderstanding. I called him like 20 times in a row and he didn't answer any of them. I sent him messages. Thomas, what's going on? This can't really be happening. Answer me right now. And nothing. Check-in was already closing, and I had to decide what to do. Take the flight alone? Cancel everything? Go look for Thomas and make a scene? I was shaking with rage. I literally felt like I was going to have a breakdown right there in the middle of the airport, with both our suitcases next to me and all the passengers looking at me weird, because I was obviously on the verge of a panic attack. Finally, Thomas called me, like 2 minutes before they completely closed check-in. He told me that Elizabeth had twisted her ankle going down some stairs in her building and that she couldn't walk, that she had called Thomas crying because she didn't know what to do and didn't have anyone else who could help her. I said, what about her friends? What about her family? Why the hell does she have to call you? On the day of our honeymoon? And he told me I was being insensitive, that it was a real medical emergency and that he couldn't just ignore her, and that I could take the flight and go have fun, and that he would make sure Elizabeth was okay, and then we'd meet up there in a few days. I told him that if he didn't get on that plane with me right that moment, things between us were going to change forever. He said I was overreacting and being dramatic, that he understood I was disappointed, but that this was more important. And he hung up. I didn't get on the plane. I couldn't. Honestly, I was too furious and humiliated to sit on a 10-hour flight alone, crying, while my husband played nurse with his ex. Instead, I took a flight to the city where Monica lives, my sister. She was super surprised when I called her from the airport saying I was coming there, but she told me no problem, that her house was my house and I could stay as long as I needed. I spent the whole flight like 2 hours, I think, alternating between crying and feeling a rage so deep I wanted to throw my phone out the window. I didn't answer any of the messages Thomas sent me during that time, and he sent several, all trying to justify his decision and saying I would understand when I calmed down. I got to Monica's house like at noon. She hugged me at the door and let me cry on her shoulder for like half an hour before asking me what had happened exactly. I told her everything, from the message at the airport to the phone call, and she was outraged, like more angry than me even. She told me Thomas was an asshole, that Elizabeth obviously still had feelings for him and was manipulating him, and that I deserved way better than someone who stood me up on our honeymoon. I don't know why, but hearing her say that made me feel validated, like I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed. That night, Monica took me to a club in her city. It wasn't my style at all. I mean, I'm not one to go out dancing and drinking normally, but she insisted I needed to clear my head and not stay home crying over a man who clearly didn't value me. We had some drinks, okay, quite a few drinks, danced like crazy, and I let myself take a ton of super happy photos, laughing and having fun with my sister and her friends. And yes, I admit it, I was being petty. I wanted Thomas to see that I wasn't going to stay home waiting for him like a submissive and sad wife. So I uploaded the photos to my Instagram with captions like, making the best of it and who needs a honeymoon when you have your sister, and I sent them directly to him by message too. Just so he'd know he hadn't ruined my life with his stupid decision. He saw the messages, the blue check marks appeared, but didn't answer anything. Nothing for hours. I started wondering if I had gone too far, if I had been too cruel sending him those photos. But Monica told me not to even think about feeling bad, that he was the one who had started all this, and that I had every right to do whatever I wanted with my time. We stayed up super late talking about my marriage, about all the warning signs I had ignored, about how Thomas had always prioritized his work and Elizabeth over me. It was like therapy, you know? Finally, someone was really listening to me and validating my feelings instead of telling me I was overreacting. The next day, I woke up to a bunch of messages, but not from Thomas, but from my mom and Thomas's mom. Turns out Thomas had sent them the photos I had uploaded and had told them his version of the story, where basically I was the insensitive villain who had gone partying while he did a good deed helping someone in an emergency. My mom wrote me something like, "Anna, we're very disappointed in you. Thomas told us he was just helping Elizabeth with an injury and you decided to go get drunk and dance instead of supporting your husband? This isn't like you. What's going on?" Thomas's mom was even worse. She told me I was a terrible and selfish wife, that how dare I embarrass her son like that when he was just being a good human being. I felt doubly betrayed. Not only had my husband stood me up on our honeymoon, but now he had manipulated the narrative to make me look like the bad guy. I was shaking with rage when I answered them all, and I wasn't exactly diplomatic. I explained to them, well, more like unloaded on them, that Thomas had been an obsessive workaholic for months, who constantly canceled plans on me for work meetings, that Elizabeth called him for any bullshit, and he always dropped everything to help her, that he had left me alone on my birthday to go fix her water heater, and that now he had left me stranded at the airport on the day of our honeymoon because she had twisted an ankle. And an ankle. Something for which emergency services literally exist. Friends, taxis, but no, she had to specifically call my husband to rescue her. I told them that Thomas had never set clear boundaries with his ex, that I had been super patient and understanding during our entire relationship and the first months of marriage, but that this was too much. That I wasn't insensitive for being disappointed and angry, and that they should be questioning why Thomas thought it was acceptable to cancel our honeymoon for this instead of judging me for going to my sister's. After sending those messages, I turned off my phone because I didn't want to know what they were going to answer. I spent that whole week at Monica's house. She worked from home, so she kept me company during the day. We went for walks in the afternoons, cooked together, and honestly, it was more therapeutic than any trip to Greece would have been at that moment. I didn't answer a single message from Thomas during those days. He sent some at first trying to justify himself, then got more defensive, saying I was being immature, and that when I was ready to talk like adults he would be available, and then he just stopped writing. The silence was almost worse than the arguments, because it meant neither of us was giving in and that this was more serious than either of us had anticipated. On Sunday of that week, I decided I had to go back home. Not because I necessarily wanted to see Thomas, but because I couldn't stay hiding at my sister's house forever. I had to go back to work on Monday. He had asked for 2 weeks vacation for the honeymoon, but obviously I wasn't going to use them all anymore, and I needed clothes, my things, and to face my reality. Monica offered to come with me, but I told her I was fine, that I needed to do this alone. She dropped me off at the airport with a super long hug and made me promise I'd call her if I needed anything. And when I got home, I realized Thomas hadn't been there all week. The house was exactly as I had left it on Monday morning before going to the airport, but dirtier. There were dishes in the sink, the bed unmade, his work clothes from Monday thrown on the bedroom floor. It was as if he had run out and never come back. I checked the closet and sure enough, clothes were missing. His laptop wasn't there. His toothbrush either. Where the hell had my husband been living for a whole week? I sent him a message, the first in 7 days, asking him where he was. He answered like 2 hours later. 2 hours. Can you believe it? Saying he had been at Elizabeth's house all week because she couldn't move around alone with her injured ankle and someone had to take care of her, that he had been at his ex-wife's house. For a week. Our honeymoon week. I don't know what face I made when I read that message, but I probably looked like I'd been hit by a truck. How was it possible for someone to be so incredibly stupid or insensitive? Did Thomas really think this was normal? That living with his ex-wife during the week we were supposed to be on our honeymoon was a reasonable decision? I didn't answer the message. I literally couldn't. I had no words. Instead, I packed a suitcase with clothes and essentials, called my parents and told them I was coming to their house, that I had to tell them something important. My parents live like 40 minutes from my house, in a quiet suburb where I grew up. When I arrived, my mom opened the door and her face changed immediately when she saw me. I think she realized something was very wrong because she didn't ask questions. She just let me in and made me tea while she called my dad, who was in the garden. I told them the whole story from the beginning, without omitting any details. From how Thomas always prioritized Elizabeth and his work, to the airport disaster, to the fact that he had spent our honeymoon week living at his ex's house. My dad was furious. Like I saw him angrier than I'd seen him in years. He said he was going to go talk to Thomas. Immediately. That this was unacceptable. That nobody treated his daughter like that. My mom was crying, apologizing for judging me without knowing the whole story, saying that if she had known all this, she never would have sent me those horrible messages. I told them it wasn't their fault, that Thomas had lied to them to look good, and that I understood why they had reacted that way. I stayed at my parents' house that night, and the next morning I called a divorce lawyer that a friend had recommended to me years ago. Irony? She had gotten divorced like 6 months after getting married, and I never thought I'd end up in the same situation. The lawyer told me I had a pretty clear case of emotional abandonment, and that given the marriage had lasted less than 2 months, the process would be relatively quick and simple, especially since we didn't have children, or shared property really, just the apartment that was Thomas's from before. And that same afternoon, I hired the lawyer and we started the process. I didn't tell Thomas anything yet. I wanted the papers to arrive directly in his hands so he would understand I was serious. My parents supported me completely. Even my dad told me that if I needed money for the lawyer, he would lend it to me no problem, although in the end it wasn't necessary because I had enough savings. Monica called me every day to see how I was, offering to let me move in with her permanently if I needed to. The divorce papers arrived to Thomas like a week later. He called me immediately, and it was the first time we spoke on the phone since that disastrous call at the airport. He sounded surprised, hurt even, asking me if I was really going to end our marriage over this. I told him it wasn't over this, it was over everything, over years of putting me in second or third place after his work and his ex, over not respecting our marriage enough to set normal boundaries, over thinking it was acceptable to live with Elizabeth during our honeymoon. I told him I deserved a husband who prioritized me, who respected me, who made me feel loved and valued, and that he clearly wasn't that man. Thomas tried to argue, saying I was being dramatic, that he did love me, but that I was too jealous and insecure, that Elizabeth was his friend and was going to continue being so, and that if I couldn't accept that, then maybe divorce was for the best. I was surprised how easily he accepted everything, as if part of him was also waiting for a way out. He didn't fight for me, didn't suggest couples therapy, didn't say he was going to change, or that he regretted how things had turned out. He just accepted the papers and said his lawyer would get in touch with mine. The divorce was finalized like 3 months later. It was one of the fastest processes my lawyer had seen, mainly because Thomas didn't contest anything, didn't ask for anything, basically signed everything without objections. There was an awkward moment where I had to go to the apartment, with my dad and my sister to pick up my things, and Thomas was there but we barely looked at each other. I packed all my stuff in a couple of hours, left my key on the kitchen table, and walked out of there knowing I would never come back. A couple of weeks after everything was legally finalized, I got an email from Thomas. I wasn't expecting anything from him at that point, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. It was a long letter, like 5 paragraphs, where he basically blamed me for everything. He said I had been insecure from the beginning, that my jealousy had poisoned our relationship, that he had only tried to be a good person helping someone in need, and that I had turned that into unnecessary drama. He ended by saying he hoped that someday I would mature enough to have an adult relationship where I could trust my partner. I deleted the email without answering. It wasn't worth it. Now I live with Monica. I switched jobs to a company in her city that paid better. Anyway, and I'm rebuilding my life from scratch. It still hurts sometimes. I'm not going to lie. Especially when I see happy couples or when someone mentions honeymoons. But I also feel like I took a huge weight off my shoulders. Like I can finally breathe after years of holding my breath waiting for Thomas to change or prioritize me. My parents visit me often. My friends have been incredibly supportive. And Monica is the best roommate I could ask for. Last week, I deleted all the wedding photos from my Instagram. It was cathartic in a weird way, like officially closing that chapter. Someone asked me if I ever regret not trying to save the marriage, if I should have gone to couples therapy or given it more time. And the truth is, I don't. A man who leaves his wife stranded at the airport on the day of their honeymoon to go take care of his ex isn't a man who wants to be married. Not really. And I deserve better than that. We all do.